Hey, how's it going, guys? Chris here. Today, we're going to be looking at Australia to hit the highest average income tax in our history. Australia is already one of the highest tax countries, and we're going to go even higher. And then we're going to wrap off the video with why is everyone talking about productivity and what does it actually mean. So let's get into this first video. Both are linked below. The first video will be linked first, and obviously the second one second. Get into it.
Will hold Australia's Economic Reform Roundtable. It's been a quarter of a century since Australia's last major economic reform, and today our national debt sits at about $1 trillion. Government spending is at levels we've only seen in wartime or national crisis. And while Canberra spends like there's no tomorrow, workers are about to be hit with the highest average income tax rate in our history. But what worries me most isn't just the debt or the spending, it's the apathy. Too many people are profiting from the racket, and that makes real reform almost impossible. More than half of
Yeah, the Australian, well, every Western society is pretty corrupt, and your big corporations pretty much rule the government, and they lobby for you know incentives and reform for them. But when it comes to everyday Australians, no one's batting for us, and yeah, it's getting harder. Obviously, you just got to look at house prices. People my age, some people won't even ever buy a house because it's that unaffordable, and a lot of people say, oh, there will be a collapse, coming, and it will happen very shortly. But at the same time, you got to question, well, if the government's doing whatever they can to keep it up, it might stay up forever. It might stay high.
voters now rely on the government for most of their income through public sector wages, welfare, or other sub.
I'll say on that, you look at it, and it's like no shit. Most people want to work for the government because government workers, as far as this is my understanding, comment down below if you've got a different opinion and or if you work in the government. But from my understanding is there's lower pressure to actually perform in a government job. You get you get better wages than your public sector, and that's pretty common. Oh, sorry, than the private sector. The public sector gets higher pay rates on average. So yeah, most people want to work for the government because they pay good, and you know what? That's good for the people working there, but it's bad for the overall economy for everyone else because people that don't work in the public sector are subsidizing those people that are working in the public sector. Sorry, the people working in the private sector are subsidizing the people working in the public sector, and it's just this big loop. And at the end of the day, the government probably needs to downsize a bit. Will it hurt the economy in the short term? Yes, but in the long term, I think we will actually get proper growth again.
Subsidies. And it's not the poor or the downtrodden that are benefiting from all this spending. Green corporate handouts line the pockets of multi-billion-dollar energy companies. The non-means tested NDIS has created an expectation of middle-class welfare, and it's the university-educated elite who get thousands wiped off their HECS debt. Canberra is lining the pockets of the elite while making everyday Australians pick up the tab. In a speech to the Menzies Research Centre, Shadow Treasurer Ted O'Brien put it perfectly.
No more giveaways, no more gravy trains, no more government-funded boondoggles. No more creating entire industries that serve as a constituency for their own preservation to the detriment of the greater good. Australians can no longer afford such indulgences. It is.
Yeah, it's probably time for some hard times again. At the moment, for some people, they're definitely struggling. And you see that a lot where people are going homeless and whatever. But the government is spending way too much, and when over 50% of the country is relying on the government for paychecks, it says a lot about where the economy is, and it's almost stupid to try and start your own business unless you're doing it like an online and you don't have many overhead costs because it's extremely hard in this country to be successful. Like obviously there will be success stories out there, and good on those people. Like that's power to them, but for most people, like the game is rigged against you. And yeah, Like you look at like the government, the first home buyer scheme, which is meant to help people like me get into a house. First of all, it's only in a new build, so that rules out majority of the capital cities. You have to move outside the capital city, so that's not very good for most people. And then second of all it does is inflate prices. So the next generation are even more screwed. It's just government spending that they're only thinking 3 or 4 years because at the end of the day that's all they're in for.
Time that we get serious.
A great example is Labor's electric vehicle policy. They made it exempt from fringe benefit tax. It was budgeted to cost the government $50 million a year, but it's blown out by over 1,000% to $560 million. And in another few years, it will cost $1.3 billion. Take the example of a nurse on 90 grand a year. She'll pay about $687 a month to lease a Tesla Model Y. But a lawyer on 200 grand, he could pay just $552 a month for the exact same car. Over the life of the lease, the lawyer pockets an extra $8,000 discount relative to the nurse, courtesy of us taxpayers. Think about that. Taxpayers are covering almost half the cost of an EV for the highest earners. This policy provides no benefit to our country. It's welfare for the rich, and while I admire many of the things Elon Musk does, he doesn't need our tax dollars. If the government is serious about economic reform, they will slash government spending, stop hiring more public servants, cut income tax and green welfare, and unleash our greatest economic potential, the natural resources we've been blessed with. But somehow that feels unlikely.
Yeah, the solution's almost plain as day, but yet it doesn't seem like it's going to happen. And it doesn't really matter if it's Labor or Liberal, and I say it all the time, but they're both both parties are trying to improve themselves, and at the end of the day, or benefit themselves. So if they're every politician pretty much owns one or two investment properties. So why would they want to see the housing market come down? Why would they care that the cost of living crisis is so bad for everyday Australians when their politicians are making 200 to 600 grand a year? Albo's on 600 grand a year. That's insane. Why does he need that much money? That's a quick tax cut right there.
For those of us toiling 5 full days a week, the idea of working 4 days a week at 100% of pay sounds almost too good to be true. But at the upcoming Economic Roundtable, Australia's unions will cite research showing it not only boosts living standards, but also productivity. To understand how that might work, we first need to understand what productivity is, what it measures, and what it doesn't. Put simply, productivity measures how much we output compared to how much we input. It's about quantity, not cost or profit.
So, yeah, I think the 4-day work week is the most fantasy thing you can think of. Obviously, yeah, people will work harder during those 4 days that are at work compared to the 5 days. However, at the same rate, they're not going to get the exact same amount of work done. They'll get more work done in less days, but it won't be, the total amount of work done will be less. But if you compare 4 days to 4 days, when the one person's working 5 days and one person working only 4 days, potentially, yes, the person working 4 days might actually do more work in those 4 days. But that person working 5 days has an extra day to catch up. So, I don't know. Productivity is a silly metric.
Today, the average Australian worker takes just 1 hour to produce the same amount produced over an entire day in 1901. That's thanks to a bunch of factors, like economies of scale, higher skilled and educated workers, better management practices, and the single biggest factor historically, technology. A series of reports from the Productivity Commission have highlighted a long-standing productivity problem, showing Australians are working record-long hours, And yet, productivity growth is at its slowest in 60 years. And that trend is across most industrialised countries, not just Australia. So how does that work? Labour productivity typically measures the number of hours it takes to produce a good or service. This is fairly straightforward when you're looking at manufacturing or agriculture and measuring, say, the number of cars or tonnes of wheat produced per worker. But it gets trickier when applied to sectors like care services, health or education, where the maths might tell you that bigger class sizes mean more productive teachers, while the reality for students suggests the opposite. Bear in mind that nearly 90% of Australians now work in the service industry, and we start to see how the way we typically measure productivity is starting to unravel. The picture gets muddier still when we consider that labour isn't the only driver of productivity. Physical capital, like buildings, machines and equipment, as well as intangible capital, like intellectual property, also have big impacts. This chart compares labour productivity to multi-factor productivity, which measures the combined input from both labour and capital. It shows both types of productivity have been declining, but capital productivity has lagged labour productivity for the best part of 30 years. The Productivity Commission has made the same point, that the added hours workers are putting in have not been matched by business investment in the systems and technologies that would allow workers to use those hours more efficiently. So can we actually work less but produce more? The data suggests yes, especially if investments in better management and new technology are matched with less burnout, better...
Mate, it sounds awesome. Like, I'd love to only work 4 days a week, but knowing me, I'd probably work 4 days a week and then I'd have to get a second job to work, an extra day or two. Because a long weekend every weekend, yeah, it's great. It's awesome. But you think wage growth now is slow? It's going to tank so hard. And the other thing is, if everyone's having 3 days off every weekend, they're going to want to spend more money, and then therefore they're going to need more money, and they're not going to get more money because they're working less hours. So unless, I don't know.
better staff retention and more motivated employees. Work smarter, not longer. That's the challenge for next week's roundtable.
It'd be nice, but I don't think it's going to happen. Go back to this video. Let's have a look at, so this video is Australia to be the highest tax income. Let's have a look at it. Sad for 67 people that didn't vote for this. Yep. And definitely I think a lot of people are going to change their vote next year. And will it make a difference? I don't know. How about we sack 2/3 of government workers and slash the budget by a third? That would do the trick. Obviously, probably 2/3 of government workers is probably a bit extreme, but definitely there needs to be, like, if you want to look at productivity, right? Look at the productivity in government workers. Like, there's no expectation for them to work hard, in my opinion. From what I've seen, a lot of them are pretty laid back, and all you have to do is look at your roadwork crew, and like there's 6 guys watching one guy dig a hole. So yeah, how about reduce the government? If you voted for Albo, I hate you. People are getting pretty against Albo, that's for sure. Comment down below what you guys think. Obviously, I think it's a pretty close thing. And yeah, the government is not in the best interest of people. And the people that need the government the most are the ones getting fucked over by the government. Smaller government, actually will probably help most people because less dollars are going towards it, so that means more dollars in our pocket. Obviously, there needs to be regulation and whatever, but that's sort of where the government needs to learn its place. Anyway, guys, I'd love to hear from you guys, and I'll catch you in the next one. Later.